It is a touch after 5 o'clock. Wow, it's been a busy day, and indeed, this is the 6th of August. Welcome to Conversations with Eminent Women. Thank you so much for joining us once again this week, and we look forward indeed to being with you for the next hour or so as we speak to some eminent women in various positions doing amazing things. And today we are tackling the issue of early childhood development. How do we deal with the centers? How do we deal with regulating those centers? But more importantly, the funding that comes, how are women also being assisted to develop their own early childhood development centers? So our main conversation today then speaking about operating a well-functioning ECD center. Joining us, we've got Mrs. Vanencia Chiloane, Technical Advisor for ECD at the Department of Basic Education. We also have Heléne Brandt, National Marketing Manager at Grow ECD. And later on, we're hoping to be in conversation with the principal of an ECD. As soon as she joins us, she'll also be part of this very conversation. And do remember that we look forward to your comments. You can send through your comments right here on YouTube, Conversations with Eminent Women. That's where you are watching us on. We're also on my Twitter page, my X page, Tshegohaco Moagi_, so you can watch us there as well. And do send through your comments. We'll definitely be reading your comments throughout the duration of the show. And I'd also love to know, whereabout are you listening to or watching us from this evening? And I think the main thing is there an ECD center in your area where you currently are? And is it functioning? Is it well functioning? And we'll get a clearer definition of what a well functioning ECD is from the ladies that are joining us this evening. So let's get straight into it and find out and unpack this very broad conversation indeed, as we start our conversation with Mrs. Chiloane. Vanencia, good evening to you, and thank you so much for your time this evening. So let us start with the definition of a well-functioning ECD. I know that, of course, we've roped in the Department of Basic Education, Vanencia, mainly because you have now taken over this function shift from the Department of Social Development. And it has been a while now, if I'm not mistaken, a few years actually, that this is now in your branch and in your space of DBE. But when we speak about a well-functioning ECD center, what exactly is that, and what do you look for as the Department of Basic Education?
Good evening, and thank you so much, Tshegohaco. It's such a pleasure to be here on behalf of the Department of Basic Education. I think this is a very important conversation that you are championing, and we hope that we'll be able to provide your listeners and as well as the viewers with some insight that they'll be able to map what the future of ECD looks like in South Africa. As introduced, my name is Vanencia Chiloane, and from a technical perspective, we've received the function shift on the 1st of April 2022, which would make it 3 years young. And one would be able to say tongue-in-cheek that we've just passed our terrible 2 years. Effectively, a well-functioning ECD center is defined within the landscape in which we operate, and that would be termed in our ECD strategy for 2030, as well as several policy perspectives. I think at the core, and I stand to be advised by you of how technical I can be in how, the references and the definitions that I'll be providing. But at the core of it is where our children feel safe, they feel welcome, and they are engaged in learning. I think that paramount to whatever we deliver is that quality is an experience, and it's only through an experience that active learning takes place. And active learning is through engagement, and engagement commences from the moment that child is entrusted to our ECD center, and as moment when our child is entrusted to our ECD center manager or principal, the practitioner, and is then able to support the development of that child. We have various systems and references, or as the conversation continues, we'll be able to unpack what we have termed as a 5x5 index, which we'll be launching next month, as well as the contextualization in terms of our mass registration drive and our quality assurance and support system, and what this looks like, particularly in the year where South Africa is the presidency or is the president for the G20, and what that means in terms of South Africa leading the discourse on ECCE as a cornerstone for quality foundational learning. I would like to pause there. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Vanencia. But before you pause, you mentioned ECCE. For those who are not too sure of the terminologies, and we know that with education, in the education space, there are these, do we call them abbreviations or, acronyms, and how things have been put together to, make it easier for you to understand. But what is ECCE as you've termed it?
Okay, thank you so much. So ECCE is Early Childhood Care and Education, and I'm going to take from the leaf of our Chief Director, Ms. Kalula Manona, in which she articulated that it is the continuum, taking from the literature on the first 1,000 days from conception and the building on to the next 1,000 days. She references the impact of recognizing that early childhood care and education commences from that process. So it is the integration of care as well as education. And in terms of our policy framework, it is also the policy from the Department of Higher Education and Training that defines the professional qualifications for our ECD practitioners as published in 2017. But from the Department of Basic Education, we have also drafted an early childhood development, human resource development strategic plan in which we profile what the practitioner workforce looks like and what we would like to achieve as defined in our ECD strategy. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Vanencia. So, Heléne, I'd like to bring you into then this conversation from Grow ECD's point of view and what you hear from the Department of Basic Education. What is it then that you do as Grow ECD to ensure that everything works smoothly in these ECD centers?
Thanks, Tshego. What's really wonderful to see in the Department of Basic Education's strategy for ECD is how they acknowledge that ECD is the whole country's prerogative, and that we need intersectoral, cross-functional support to make ECD work. We can't, as citizens in South Africa, sit back and say DBE must take care of early learning. We must all contribute. And we as Grow ECD have the wonderful opportunity to play a very practical role in that space. So Grow ECD works with preschool center owners, mostly women, across the country to help them with practical tools, the skills and the resources that they need to achieve those 5-star early learning outcomes and help to make sure that children are thriving. So we really are a practical implementation partner that focuses on training, skills, resources. For example, we have a free ECD management app, a free DBE approved curriculum, downloadable ECD resources. We host registration clinics, and we have a flagship program called our ECD Accelerator and a small business program where we journey with the center over 3 years to really get registered, achieve all the compliance requirements, and improve the learner outcomes. So that's where Grow ECD fits in, as well as many other nonprofits in this space. And we're lucky that there are many amazing nonprofits who work in ECD and with the department.
Vanencia, I want to quickly bring you back in here because my next question to Heléne is linked up to what your response is. But are you seeing that there are more women, Vanencia, as a department that are registering? I know that you've got the Banapeli registration drive as well. Are you seeing that there are more women who are actually owning or, taking over the role of having an ECD center? Are there any men at all? I mean, we're happy with the ladies, of course.
Thank you so much for that question. And I think it's such a profound question, particularly because we're in Women's Month. We have from our ECD census confirmed that our workforce is largely female. And this is not a phenomenon limited to South Africa. It is actually continental and internationally presented. The phenomena is positioned within the care economy, and the care economy, as presented earlier, considers the whole role of what we are able to do as females being the primary caregivers, and then as we journey into the workplace or we reintegrate into the workplace post our maternity leave, we then entrust our children to those that will continue their development. I think it's also important to indicate here that, albeit that we have a woman-led workforce, this does not take away from the male support as well as the male representation that is currently in the workforce as well. But by and large, it is women. And I think it's also a necessary workforce that we have, because I think if one was to champion the women discourse as well as the economic empowerment of women in South Africa, one would recognize its importance on positioning them well. And I think I'd be remiss if I don't advocate for their sustainability. It's one thing to be engaged. It is another thing to actually be sustainable in the empowerment, in the entrepreneurship, as well as the participation of women in the workforce. And I think our social compact representatives, such as Glow ECD, are doing phenomenal work at really building and championing that discourse. I think it's also further important that we consider the relevant support systems that are available. And when we recognize what small business departments is doing, as well as our interrelated support from other departments, and how they are then able to position the woman to further develop. One of the biggest opportunities that we have seen is how our municipal services are supporting the ECD centers by running the registration clinics in collaboration with the department, as well as our social compact, which is branded under the Banapili. And I think it's also important to indicate, for those who may not know, Banapili means children first. And by placing our children first, we're really anchoring their role and ensuring that we are able to support them from conception. And this is the hand holding or the baton passing through the various departments, and continuing that conversation within the broader perspective of the Department of Basic Education. This concerns us from birth right up until we see them completing their schooling and entering higher education learning. We're also considering the various pathways that one could ensure for the younger generation. And I say younger generation in terms of potential workforce, that would be alpha generation, considering ECD as the entrepreneurial opportunities and considering this as part of their entrepreneurship goals. Everyone wants to own a business, but sometimes your social services that you would be providing, that you would have the capacity for, is actually available within your community, within your immediate environment in which you operate. And I think it's really about building a workforce that wants to be in that environment and understands the importance of participating with it. Thank you.
And so when we then speak about Women's Month, Heléne, as you hear from Vanencia, and that the large majority of people that actually own ECD centers are women, Heléne, what then does that say about, you know, the power of women, first of all? But secondly, what does it say also about the kind of work that you then do and the support that you give as Grow ECD to these women who own their own centers?
Yes, I must admit, I'm always so impressed with every single center owner that I meet. And while you could talk about a center in general, each one is quite unique, you know, whether it's based in someone's home, someone's running it from their garage, someone's using a community hall or their church hall, or someone's renting a premises. Each of these, the women have a different approach, but I always find the vision is the same. to provide quality care, to provide a safe space for children, to prepare children for school, but also for life, right? And I think that passion is contagious. So when we work with women, we talk about, and Vanencia mentioned it, it's social entrepreneurship. So women running and starting businesses in ECD often come with a heart for children, and they open their doors and they start their businesses because they have a heart for children, and they're not willing to just sit back and wait for something to happen. They take action and they start their centers with their passion. But we also see that they need to balance that with a head for business, the business principles. Because if you're running an ECD center, it is essentially quite a complex small business that's providing a very valuable community service. So when I say business principles, I don't mean profit first, but it's actually about purpose and impact. And you do need money to make that impact possible. You need to run your center really well. You need to have great operating systems. You need to have systems and tools in place. So it's also great that you mentioned youth because in our centers, about 42% of all the staff in the ECD centers we work with are youth. And those are people who are building up their careers and learning from their center owners as mentors, potentially to open their own centers in future. So we like to provide tools such as our free ECD app, which I mentioned, which is a management tool where center owners can access the tools to administer their center, manage their finances, enroll learners, keep track of learner assessment results, observations, engage parents, and do their reporting and data collection for themselves and also for DBE and maybe other funders. So that's one of the places where we start in supporting women.
Mm-hmm. Is it easy, Heléne, to register an ECD center? I mean, we know that the department has got this thing of the Banapele registration drive that they've been running for quite some
Yes.
time now. From your observations and the research that you've done, how easy is it really for women to succeed and to actually register an ECD center?
Yes. So I always say that running an ECD center, you have to be the CEO, the Chief Everything Officer. You're doing the finances, it's legal, it's nutrition, it's curriculum, and registration and compliance is really an important part of that. And I think especially now that the subsidy is increasing, and it's so important that centers get registered if they want access to other opportunities that DBE has available, such as the subsidy. So I would say, you're saying, is it difficult or is it easy to register? And I would say the answer, as with all good things, is it depends. It depends on whether the center meets the registration requirements. The actual process of getting registered is not complicated, right? There's an online system where you get started. There's documents that need to be submitted. The complexity is in if your center doesn't understand the requirements and hasn't prepared for registration. So when we do our registration support for centers, we always say, before you go and start clicking to get registered and apply and reach out, prepare. The preparation is the most important part. Preparing your documents, preparing your registers, preparing your policies and your procedures, preparing your systems, walking through the health and safety requirements, through there's very practical lists and guidelines and documents that DBE have given us. And if you work through that systematically, and you make sure that you have met the safety requirements, the health standards, then you will feel confident as you step into registration. I think the difficulty is when you step into registration without having knowledge or insight and preparing yourself. Is that fair?
Mm-hmm. I hear you. You need to be very prepared to run an ECD.
We
Yeah.
ran a wonderful webinar with a colleague, a DBE representative, just last month. Over 1,000 women joined that online webinar, and with DBE we walked through it step by step, how to get registered. I'd be happy to put the link in the show notes so that those interested can follow up in detail.
Absolutely. Please do that so that people can know what to do. And as you speak, Heléne, about registering, and you see, of course, a lot of women, and that it is a step by step, but being fully prepared for something such as this. What would we then do, or what should be done? You've also mentioned quite interestingly that ECD centers are they the woman open them anywhere, right? It can be in your sitting room, can be in a garage, can be in your backyard, can be wherever that you find comfortable. And this is a question then for both ladies, and I'll start with you, Heléne. How then is it possible to monitor where these ECD centers are being opened, the safety of it, and also if it's actually feasible for children to be in these centers?
That's a very good question. I think, especially as parents, we also need to educate ourselves about what to look for when we're bringing our child to an ECD center. To ask yourselves, can you see health and safety standards? For example, a practical thing to look for when you go to an ECD center. Can my child easily walk into the kitchen, or is the kitchen closed off? In the kitchen, there's pots with boiling water. There might be cleaning material. Is the kitchen separate and safe? Is there safe places for babies to sleep? You know, as parents, we must equip ourselves more so that we ask better questions. Ask about the learning program. Ask about the qualifications of the teachers. Ask about the health and the safety. Sorry, but your question was about the. See, now I got
Just making
sidetracked.
sure that is it, it's okay. Making
How do
sure
we
that
how
it
do we
actually
track?
is.
How do we track?
Yes,
And
yeah.
how do we know who's opening? Yes, and I think Vanencia can comment on that. But that's why the new DBE Banapele registration process is so wonderful. It's because it has 3 stages: bronze, silver, and gold. And bronze is essentially a very simple online application process where every center can raise their hand and say, "Here I am. Here I am." And they can start receiving the support from DBE, from other nonprofits, from the support partners. It's very, very important that every ECD center must start the process of registration, even if they don't meet all the requirements. They must start. And I think as parents, we must ask for registration status when we visit centers. Vanencia, do you
Absolutely.
agree? Am I covering that correctly?
Thank you. Not sure if I have permission to continue.
Please go ahead.
Thank you so much, Tshegohaco. Yes, Heléne, I think you've been able to sound it up so well, and I think that's in terms of our social compact. It's a beautiful example of that. I think one of the things that we just need to be clear on is that registration is the first step to access.
Yeah.
And by getting onto that, yes, there's a process, but we are Batu Pili. As South Africa, we want to be there for everyone. We intend to be there for everyone, and we follow through for everyone. And our systems are accessible. They are available in all South African languages. There is someone on the other side of the line walking the practitioner, the center owner across the country. We've got our Minister of Basic Education fully engaged, our Deputy Minister, our DG, the leadership. The collective leadership that's within the department's perspective. In our social compact, we've got the collective leadership in the Banapili program unit and the process that's engaged there. We've also got the collective leadership. And I think it's about ensuring that that access message goes out, that come closer. We would like to help you so that we can have this conversation. And when we champion the universal access, we are referring to holistic support. We're not referring to compliance. And I think that's just something that that you've been
Yes.
able to articulate, Heléne. And I think it's one of those things that we must continuously share because it's the good news of South Africa. And I think it's the one thing that other countries are looking at South Africa to say, how are you getting it right? And how are you inspiring communities to rally around this process? How are you getting the political world to support you? I think also, in addition to that, is ensuring that we make use of the our USD code, which is *134 *776 hash. Simple. They'll call you back. They'll be able to support you. They'll be able to walk you through it. And I think in addition to that as well is that, and I think Heléne was able to speak about the various products that are available from the Department of Basic Education. We do have our national curriculum framework, and I think that starts speaking about the quality perspective. We also have the current development of our learning teaching support material. We do have our info hub that is also available. And once you go onto that, you'll also be able to access the relevant information to support you. I think it would be great to indicate that as we have a management system, we have the Education Management Information System, which is known as EMIS. With the ECD management system, it is called eCares. So when you look at it, in terms of it being typed up is DBE Cares. And I think that is just the best way to explain why it's so important to participate, that even in the naming convention, and it worked out to our advantage, that we care. We want to know who you are. We want to be able to support you, and we want to be able to tell the good news story with you being a center, being the focus. And I think as women, we tend to build each other up so well, but we don't necessarily provide the connective networks. And this is one of the processes that provides those networks, such as our partners in Grow ECD and many others, Smart Start to mention, that are really able to get to the grassroots and support from the ground up. I think it's also important to reference our systems thinkers, such as LIFA, that have done amazing work, UNICEF that has come into support. And as you go through our DBE website, you'll be able to see the partners, you'll really be able to interact with them and see the great work that they're doing. It's also valid to bring up the perspective on the quality discussion or the dimensions around that. I did reference earlier our 5x5, which will the 2024 index, which we'll be launching now in September. And that speaks to the mechanisms in terms of the 5 functions that we look at and how that tells us a story in terms of the interventions and the support that we've provided. And this is encompassed within our quality assurance and support system. And I think it's also anchored on the fact that we are supportive, we are developmental. So all activities that any practitioner or center manager or principal participates in is for their development. And it's also believed that when you develop a woman, you develop a home, you develop a community, and before we know it, we have ensured that there is economic empowerment happening at the grassroots. Thank you.
That is Vanencia Chiloane. She, of course, is from the Department of Basic Education, technical advisor for ECD at the department. We're also in conversation with Heléne Brandt, who is the National Marketing Manager at Grow ECD, and really just talking about operating a functioning ECD. That is our conversation today. We do know that majority of women are the ones that actually run ECD centers. And if you do have questions, how do we track and ensure that the ECD center is fit for children? Is there an ECD center in your area that you might be a little bit concerned about, or that you know someone that wants to open an ECD center? Do send us those questions and your comments right here on Conversations with Eminent Women with myself, Tshegohaco Moagi. And of course, we are together until about 6 o'clock this evening as we unpack this very important conversation. We are hoping to also speak to a principal of an ECD center, also a woman, just to touch base with us about what she does, how she is able to run her center, when she started, and so forth. But we'd love to hear from you. Our comment section is open, so do drop us a message. Questions that you may have as well for the ladies, they are more than ready. They are geared up to take on your questions, and even just a comment, about how ECD centers are run in South Africa, and what do you make of this Banapile registration drive that has been ongoing by the Department of Basic Education. So you are more than welcome to engage with us there as well. Heléne, I then want to come back to you, because sometimes, we speak a lot about the financing issues when it comes to, being able to open an ECD center, and we'll get to that shortly. But I'd like for you to just address the issue of some of the free things that are offered by Grow ECD, the free tools that are offered by Grow ECD, so that women are able to thrive, and open these ECD centers and assist in their communities.
Thank you so much. I think that when we speak about money, I don't know how you were raised, but I was raised that you don't speak about money, and making money is an issue, and you shouldn't want too much money. But I think the reality is money is a tool and a resource. And if you want to provide a quality service, imagine you're running an ECD center, you want to provide a quality service. You would want to employ the best possible teacher, someone with a qualification. You would want to invest in quality educational equipment. You would want your premises to look beautiful and fit for purpose and safe. All of that requires investment. You would want to provide nutritious meals. That requires investment. So I think when we speak about money in the ECD sector, unfortunately, our data shows us that many women are barely earning minimum wage, and they're working very, very long hours, and they're taking care of one of the most valuable assets in our country, our children. So I think we must advocate for quality, for parents to be willing to pay for a wonderful service. And luckily, we have the subsidy to support communities where that's not always possible. But as parents, we have to shift our narrative as well. ECD is not just daycare. It's not just a place where someone takes care of your child during the day. It's an investment in the foundational education, and we must want to invest in that. So when we work with women around the finances in their business, a lot of it starts with the mind shift and understanding that, yes, you're providing a social service, but that you may charge for that service, that it's okay to charge for that service because you're reinvesting that money into the quality that you can offer. Then we help them to understand with business mentoring, we help them understand what fees should you charge. So just because someone down the road is charging 450 Rand, should you also be charging that? It actually depends on how much you're paying for rent, what type of services you offer, all of that type of thing. So when it comes to the finances, I think it's really good to start applying business thinking and understanding your income and your expenses and your business model. We make sure that we provide as many tools as possible for free. So I mentioned the free ECD app. So this is where you can download many resources, policies, procedures, templates, classroom, decor, rhymes, songs, support resources. This is where you can assess learners against by age group, so you can see whether learners are on track for their developmental areas. You can access data-free online training for your professional development for you and your teachers. Track your finances very simply, just money in, money out, and it draws reports for you and helps you understand your money, and it helps you manage all of your admin. So the second thing that we offer is inside the app, there's a NCF aligned, the National Curriculum Framework that Vanencia was referring to, an NCF aligned curriculum that's play-based. And we didn't just write it out. I mean, I don't know about you, but I don't like to read long documents. I like to see it in action. If someone wants to give me a recipe, I prefer a YouTube recipe where I can see what should it look like. And we have done the same with our curriculum, which is like a recipe for what a teacher should do every day. So in this curriculum, there are voice notes, there are videos, there are pictures of what to do in the art activities, for example. You can click play and you can hear the song that you'll be singing. What if you've never heard the song, Old MacDonald? What if you've never heard the rhyme that is recommended in the curriculum? So all of that's been recorded for you. You can play it and you can hear it. So the curriculum is a wonderful tool. Then we found that many schools have babies and they don't know how to develop babies. They're just taking care of babies, making sure they eat and sleep and are fed. But you can do amazing things with babies to already support and stimulate them. So there's even a baby curriculum. Next, we have lots of free webinars that we host every month. And I think I mentioned the ECD resource portal. So the ECD resource center, which you can get from our website, has resources from Grow, but also from other partners. And if you're a partner, if you're an ECD in ECD and you have amazing resources, we collate lots of free resources on there for you to download.
Vanencia, then, when you hear what Grow ECD is doing, especially when, Heléne speaks about, hey, there's problems, of course, with financing. We all want to have the money to be able to have a functioning ECD. But what then is the Department of Basic Education doing? How will you be re-looking just your framework or reviewing and implementing the funding model for ECD centers to increase the funding for this particular sector? And I also ask this on the back, Vanencia, of knowing very well that we've been told in South Africa that government just does not have the money anymore, that very cash-strapped government that we are currently dealing with. So how are you going to ensure that there's enough funding in the sector for ECD centers?
That's a really good question. And I think the importance of what you're saying is that we are in a scarcity environment. Unemployment rate is high in South Africa. And with that said, that means that everybody is trying to stretch their rand as far as possible. However, the conversation in ECD is we have received an unprecedented 10 billion rand over the next 3 years. And this has supported the subsidy. And to be able to access that subsidy, we need our centers to be registered, our programs. And when we say programs, this includes a variety of how they are presented. And once they are registered and they've met the requirements for bronze and they move into silver, they can then start accessing that subsidy. I think what's also important in this regard is that I believe that, as Heléne has advised, we weren't brought up to think of money, and money is necessary. But we were brought up to serve. And it is in service and purpose-driven service that money will follow. A parent, when they have access to those funds, will pay. They'll even be moved to donate, to volunteer, to support, because they know that their child and the children that their child is exposed to is benefiting. As a parent who is invested in the system, I've made it a point to ensure that my kids are exposed. And that requires us to invest. And when we speak of investments, we speak of it at the heart of it. It's not just a policy document. It's not just a statement that is presented. It's all of us taking up the role to serve. Effectively, in terms of the legislative environment in which we operate, we understand that where money is access, public funds, there are certain requirements that must be met. And I think there's a due diligence required there. And we must respect it and protect it, because at the end of the day, the child benefits and the center benefits and the community benefits. And in the long run, that child can then start by thriving by 5 and accessing our schooling system on an fair, if I could use the word fair, footing, such that they did not have to stay out of a learning environment before they entered our required mandatory schooling. I think it's also important to emphasize that, particularly in this regard, that business skills, and I think Heléne was amazing at how she presented it, is really managing what you can and then knowing what to ask for. One of the conversations I attended where there was the discussion on supporting ECD principals and really championing the work that they do. The question was, if I were to come up to you and ask you for your proposal, your business plan, what does that look like? What does it feel like? And can you tell it to me without you getting lost in the many multiplication perspectives that is assumed to be required? These are micro enterprises. Chances are that a parent 1, 2, 3, depending on how many parents there are in the center, in this program, are able to afford? And how do you stretch that fund as far as possible? How do we then also further support the sponsorships that are available? You're providing a service, the service is available, it is supporting this community, this business is interested in supporting this community. How do you access that? And I think a big opportunity that is provided in this regard is how do we ensure that the women that lead our programs are enabled to know what to seek, where to seek, and how to access it. And I think access is paramount. Because it's one thing to have the knowledge, it's one thing to have the language acquisition and be able to make the statements that are needed, but not being able to access it, not being able to do that introduction, to follow through, and actually detail what your needs are, what your wants may be, but what is the bottom line that you need to respond to ensure that you can maintain the service that you're providing to the children, the service that you're providing to the community, as well as ensure that you are sustainable. Because sustainability is not limited to the income statement. Sustainability is the holistic development of the individual that keeps them invested in supporting the development of our children. And I think that is, of everything else, paramount to accessing that subsidy is being sustainable. If we're going to increase access by 2030, that means that we need to identify sustainable opportunities that will get more children into programs, and these programs are registered, and these registered programs have moved from bronze to silver. That subsidy is being accessed, and we can confirm that so many more children are accessing early learning programs, and these are the quality matrix that we are using to confirm that these early learning programs are available. Thank you.
Some people may then ask, Vanencia, and Heléne, I'd also like for you to respond to this one. They may say, what about the skills, right? Because we grew up in ECD centers in the areas that we come from, in the communities, where you just found a lady who saw the need to take in people's children, look after them for the day, and ensure that, when their parents coming back from work, they then go back home. But now things have obviously changed. Now that it is more formalized, there's a lot that has now changed with this particular sector. What do these women need to remember? Those that actually are owners of ECD centers, who will most probably hire more women as well to be part of ECD centers, when it comes to skills that they may need, when it comes to, the education that they may need to also go for. What is provided by the Department of Basic Education? And Heléne, then what would be ideal? What are the kind of skills that would be ideal for them to have, or a background of some sort in teaching, I suppose? Vanencia, let's start with you.
Thank you so much for the question. I think it's such a great question, particularly because we have drafted in our early childhood development resource, human resource development strategic plan, that we have a tiered system or phased in approach, short term introducing practice standards. Followed through by that, we will then continue in the development of quality assurance and support systems. And then from that, we will then be introducing micro-credentials system. And what that does is it takes the key skill sets, it breaks it down such that it is accessible. And we have got the Play SA online program that is available and can support practitioners and professionals in the environment to get the necessary skills to be able to provide it. I think I want to make this particular point, that skills are not limited to the language in which they are presented. The skill set of being able to tell a story is paramount to our Indigenous knowledge system in South Africa. And we need to champion that conversation. Then we can start building all other skills in terms of our developments, our milestones. This is available in our Road to Health book. It's also further expounded in our national curriculum framework for birth to 4, where we talk through each aspect. And in terms of our LTSM, this has further been broken down in terms of the age cohorts, and those milestones are clearly defined. The skills depend on the workforce capacity to internalize the need of the child. And I say that because we have our children across the spectrum. From an inclusive education perspective, we've got our children of special needs, and these special needs are defined within the neurodiversity perspectives. And one needs to be able to identify which skill do I have that I can implement, and which skill do I need so that I am better placed to support the development of this child. And in that skilling, it is not limited to the practitioner or the professional. It is extended to the family. It is extended to the community. We can only improve our childhood outcomes by taking a holistic approach to what we want to achieve. And this holistic approach is not limited or expected only from the environment in which that child is exposed to. Parents are paramount to the skills development. And when they've identified that they have a skill set and they are able to share this, that sharing, that peer learning, that professional development that takes place, that is accessible, makes it developmental and available not only to the practitioners, the principals, the professionals within the environment, but also to the greater cohort of the workforce. Sometimes it's, like you said, a YouTube video that inspires you. Other times it's social media. One of the things that we've seen is that in terms of social media, they short micro-learning opportunities. Someone says, I found this to be interesting. Click on this link. It's accessible. Tell me what you think about it, and let's have a discussion around it. And I think it's really about championing the short, intimate support processes whilst we plan towards the longitudinal support systems. From the Department of Basic Education, we are proposing a national training program, and this is to support the holistic development of the practitioners. Our census data did indicate that our practitioners' qualifications range between not having a skills qualification right up until an NQF level 9. And that shows that there is an array of opportunities for us to consider. I think also is the articulation opportunities, that your skill set does not need to come out of one qualification sub-framework. It could be presented in more than one qualification sub-framework. And it's about how we create those access opportunities so that our workforce is able to identify this and then participate. I think it's also important to bring aspects such as the ETDP CETA in that does support the skills development. We've got entities such as Nectar that also supports the workforce. And it's really within the element of the social compact that this is then unpacked. Our ECD forums that are able to also access this supports that skill development. And we've got a skills audit that has taken place at various aspects. I think it's about taking that skills audit, churning it, mapping it against our 5x5 index for 2024 once launched, and then saying this is our roadmap. And you would note that on the 17th of March earlier this year, our Minister of Basic Education, as well as Business Leadership South Africa, hosted the Leadership Summit, the Banapili 2030 Leadership Summit, where we mapped out these processes. And it is in that mapping that we'll be able to see holistic development in terms of meeting our universal access, as well as supporting the skills needed for a changing environment where our learners, children, as they grow up to become adults, will champion the South African discourse. Thank you.
Heléne? I think you've muted yourself, Heléne.
Thank you for that. So while qualifications are the foundation we would want and expect in every center, currently that is not our reality. So I think that if you think of any career, you're always learning and developing. And what I'm often looking for when I visit an ECD center is that thirst for knowledge, and that teachers realize that they should always be investing in their professional development. So when we work with an ECD center, and when you as a parent visit an ECD center, you'll pick up on that, whether the teachers are and the owner is always looking for opportunities to develop themselves. Just last week, for example, I was at a lovely ECD center called Kids Haven in Delft, and Marilyn has been running Kids Haven for more than a decade, and she runs quite a tight ship. She's got mostly good systems, and the children, when you walk into her center, you get that buzz when you feel that children are happy and they're buzzing and they're enjoying themselves, and you can see their confidence. And yet, just a few weeks ago, she joined our ECD accelerator, for example. So I say, Marilyn, it looks like you're running a good show here. Why are you joining an ECD accelerator? And she says, I'm never done. I'm always heading for the next milestone. I always want to improve. I want my center to be a beacon of hope in Delft. I want to be the best ECD center in Delft. I want when these learners head to matric, I want them to be top of the class and for me to have been part of their journey. I look at on the walls and I see that all of her teachers have been doing online training. She does not have the luxury of every teacher going for qualifications or studying full time. She can't release her teachers always because she needs them in the classroom. So studying online has really become such a game changer for these teachers where they can study and learn more at their own time and at their own pace. And I could see all their certificates of completion from grow modules to the play module that Vanencia just mentioned. I think that when we look at qualifications and quality of teachers, yes, we must look at their official qualifications, but we must also look at their hunger to learn and how they internalize that and live it out with the learners in their classroom.
Absolutely. And of course, this conversation speaking about how to operate and run an effective ECD center in South Africa, in conversation with Heléne Brandt, who is the National Marketing Manager at Grow ECD. We also speaking to Mrs. Vanencia Chiloane, who's the Technical Advisor for ECD at the Department of Basic Education. And, of course, we do have a few comments as well, questions that we may have. Terrell Lombard says, earlier it was mentioned how important parent involvement is. Can we get parents more involved in supporting the development of ECD centers and their children's learning journeys? Absolutely. An important point that Terrell is making there. And it is something that, Heléne actually spoke about, the involvement of parents in these ECD centers and in their children's learning, Vanencia. That's also quite important. And, as I speak about that and as I think about it, I'm also thinking the vetting. Parents want to go and send their children to spaces where they know that these teachers have been vetted. What is the process like there when it comes to vetting, but also how can parents be more involved in their children's learning, especially from such a young and an early age in their child's life?
Thank you so much, Tshegohaco. The vetting process for our practitioners is that they must be cleared or screened against our National Child Protection Register. This is important, it is mandatory, as defined in our Children's Act. Furthermore, as parents, I believe that we need to recognize that the service that we have engaged in, to where we take our children, where we entrust them to the ECD center, is that we also have to come with an attitude of learning and supporting. As much as the child or our children belong to us, they are also entrusted for extended periods of time, and it ranges according to the parent where this child is placed, for them to develop And I think it's important to also indicate that we do have the National Parenting Program that the Department of Basic Education runs in collaboration with Hope Worldwide, South Africa, as well as UNICEF, where we go out to communities to train parents on various aspects that are attached to ensuring that our children grow in loving, supportive environments. This does not take away from the harsh realities that many South African families face, but it does empower the parents that want to be engaged on how best to find better ways to express concern, opportunities, and provide support. It must be exceptionally difficult for a parent who has lost hope to inspire, and thus programs such as this supports that. In addition to that, we do have the integrated policy, which is our national integrated early childhood development policy for South Africa, which is our NICPD policy. I'll provide that shortly. And this also provides for the various integrated support that is available for our parents and to enable them. I think it's also important that as parents, we recognize that we are to be trusted as much as we expect those who we place our children's safety in to be trusted. And I heard an interesting perspective to say, it's one thing for you to know that I'm vetted and you are trusting your child with me. How do I know that you are doing the same? And I think as women in South Africa, undergoing GBV, undergoing the various challenges that we undergo, this conversation plays out in our children. Sometimes a child comes into an ECD center and they don't know what a hug is. Sometimes a child comes into an ECD center and they haven't had silence. And I think there's a necessary conversation there. And it's not necessarily that the Department of Basic Education needs to champion this, but in the discourse of parenting, in the discourse of conversations around what our children find themselves in and how they continue, it's a very important conversation. And we really just want to celebrate the workforce, the whole workforce, not limited to their gender or their identity, but really championing the voice of the woman for saying, your child is safe with me. Thank you.
And so, there's also the issue we speak about the vetting, making sure that, parents feel that their children are safe in these ECD centers. However, Heléne, are we seeing inclusive education being implemented as well in ECD centers, for children also with special needs? Are there such ECD centers, or are we? What then do we expect for what we expect from these children, or what should they then do if there aren't such available at the moment?
In our experience, almost all of the ECD centers we work with are very inclusive and have various learners with special needs, whether that might be physical disabilities or otherwise. Last week I was at a center in Ravensmead where there's a learner with cerebral palsy, and the center is working with the Department of Social Development and various other support organizations to make sure that they can adapt and provide the best possible support. But I would say that it's always tricky and it's always complicated. It's not just as simple as saying here's the solution, because each child then has unique needs that needs to be addressed. So but I find that the investment of time and energy is always worth it, because creating inclusive spaces does not just benefit the child with the special needs, it actually benefits the other learners too, because they're growing up in an environment where inclusivity is the norm, and it really changes the narrative.
And so I then wonder, as we wrap up our conversation, ladies, this evening on Conversations with Eminent Women, talking about being able to have a functioning ECD. I then want, or running a functioning ECD for the women, and I'm saying women because we are speaking to the women, but we know that majority of the ECD centers are run by women, which is absolutely amazing. I mean, can you just imagine having those little ones yelling and screaming and playing around the whole day? I do not know how they do it. So I definitely take my hat off to them. But for those who are wanting to register an ECD center and they're not too sure where to start, what is the best place for them to be able to start? Just a reminder for that, for us, about that, please, Vanencia.
Thank you so much. It's recommended that they go to the Department of Basic Education, click on ECD. They will get the big conversation and various other opportunities. Short code, ecdinfohub.org. Short
And
code,
from short code,
ecdinfohub.org.
ecdinfohub.org. There's also *134 *776# that I'm also seeing that people can dial,
Yes,
Vanencia, right? All right. And
yes,
from your end,
yes, and that will
what would
assist
be
them with the registration things.
perfect? Thank you so much, Vanencia. And from the Grow ECD side, we want to grow these ECDs indeed, Heléne, and to see them functioning beautifully in the country. Just your advice for women who are in the sector already, but for those who would also like to, get their own ECD center.
I think being part of a community of practice is so helpful. Running an ECD center as the chief everything officer can feel a little bit isolating sometimes. It can feel a little bit overwhelming. So joining your ECD forum and joining other free communities and communities where as center owners you can share resources and share advice is very, very helpful. I find like that a quality ECD forum makes such a great difference. Joining ECD networks and ECD platforms like WhatsApp groups, or joining the Grow app, for example, you'll join our WhatsApp group, then you can start gathering information and asking the questions that you have, and hearing from real center owners about how they've overcome those challenges. That's very, very helpful. That's where I would start.
Thank you so much, ladies, for your time this evening. I truly appreciate it, and for sharing these insights. I think we've all learned a thing or two and where we currently are when it comes to ECD centers in the country. Thank you so much, Heléne. Thank you so much to you, Vanencia, as well.
Thank
you very, very much.
Thank
That,
you.
of course, is Heléne Brandt. She's the National Marketing Manager for Grow ECD. Mrs. Vanencia Chiloane, who is Technical Advisor for ECD at the Department of Basic Education. Just wrapping up our conversation for us this evening. If you did miss it, don't worry. The link will be up on the YouTube channel for you to be able to watch Conversations with Eminent Women. Remember as well to subscribe, and I still would love to know where are you watching us from, and what is a conversation that you would like to have with an eminent woman. Any topics in mind? Do share with us on Conversations with Eminent Women. My social media handles are open and you can also converse with me there. It is Tshegohaco Moagi_ on X, Tshegohaco Moagi on Facebook, and Tshegohaco Moagi on Instagram. Thank you so much for your time. Have yourselves a beautiful evening. Further, let's do it again, God willing, next week. As I always say, remember, wherever you go, whoever you encounter, do be kind and protect your peace. Bye-bye.